I'm so excited to talk to you. I've been reading up about you and I'm like really excited. I said, oh my God. I was quite blown over with that Young Person of the Year Sexual Health Award as well. Yeah. So
Thank
why
you so
don't you
much
tell
for
us
saying
something
that.
about that while I type what I'm going to be doing today? And that's really a pain for me, but I'm still going to try. So tell me about your award.
Right, so the award is given by an organization in the UK called Brooke and NHS UK. So NHS has a whole wing dedicated to sexual health, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so these two get together to give these awards every year. And this year we actually had two people from, the Indian educators who were awarded. One was me, and one of them was my friend Karishma, who was also awarded in another category. So that was quite amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's just amazing to see that there are these organizations that are recognizing our work more than anything. So even to be nominated was a huge, huge deal. And then, of course, to be recognized is amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that with everybody.
So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
And before we move forward, let me do some more formal introduction about you because there's just so much you have done in such a short period of time. So you are, like I said, an award-winning menstrual and sexual health expert, educator, and entrepreneur. And currently, you are the founder and president of Tarini Foundation,
That's
which
right.
advocates for reproductive health, sexual health, and sustainable menstruation, impacting over 5,000 people across various channels. You have a degree in anthropology and over 5 years of experience in the field, and you've always been interested in working towards the benefit of rural and semi rural communities. To this end, you have partnered with professional doctors and organized awareness workshops for students and adults across India and made a difference. Excellent.
Oh, thank you so
Congratulations.
much for saying that.
Welcome, welcome. Before we start, Artika, I almost called you Tarini. So why the name Tarini? I mean, where did Tarini come from?
I actually get that a lot. Everybody, who knows me through work calls me Tarini. Well, can I be candid? It was a name
Absolutely.
I always thought if when I grow up and I have either a pet dog or a child, I would name one Tara and one Tarini.
Oh,
So that's literally where it came from. And Tara, because I love stars and I love the moon. I think like that's a very simple reason. And Tarini actually means the one who saves. So when I picked it up, when we were working with communities, the idea was that there's not one person who's supposed to save somebody. It's about like making everybody empowered, if I can use the word, or at least enabling everybody to reach a point where you can be taking care of yourself. And so it was as we go on in this conversation, you'll realize a lot of what I'm doing right now. Of course, I'm very passionate about it, but a lot of it was serendipity, like it was meant to happen. So I think in the same way, the name just I think that was the thing we spent the least time on because
okay,
it was just there.
just there. I know the right things are just there. You don't really need to struggle with them at all. So, Artika, if I was to start this conversation, I'm going to ask you to capture yourself. No, not yourself. Your essence in 3 words.
My essence. Um, I would say I'm trustworthy,
Mm-hmm.
which has an implication that a lot of the things I do for other people because when you say trustworthy, I think that would be an implication. I'd say I'm hardworking,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd say I'm emotional, which is something which I hear again and again, and I realize again and again, and it's both a strength and a weakness. And
Mm-hmm.
I've beat myself up over it quite a lot until I realized that it's actually not a bad thing at all.
Why
So
would you say it's a weakness?
I mean, because sometimes I do feel like a lot of my decisions are more based on emotional responses than rational. But I do pride myself in
Give me an
acknowledging that.
example. Give me an example.
I mean, about being in the field, as an anthropologist, the first thing you are taught to do is to be in participant observation, but be detached.
Mm.
But for me, so many times uh, you know, make a conscious choice to not get detached and, maybe become friends with somebody to the extent that I'll be talking to them once the project is done. And, of course, in that sense, they'll be calling you later on and things like that happen. So I sometimes end up blurring the boundaries a little bit. And this is not just on the field, but also I think anybody who's worked with me, I'm best friends with everybody now, which is
Okay.
great.
Which is great, I think. I think that's a strength. I mean, I wouldn't term that as a weakness at all. I think that's really brilliant. Excellent. And are these the words that you would have given yourself, let's say, 10 years ago?
Oh, not at all. I was 14 10 years ago. So I didn't really no, I'm a completely different person, and I do look back and sometimes I have no idea what I was doing or like what space I was even operating from. What were my decisions? I mean, I now when I look back, I'm like, I think I was a little bit mean as a child. Along with being sweet, I was like this weird mixture of and I was in a residential school, so there was just a lot of flux. So when I look back now, I can just sense that there was just so much changing all the time, which I was not even consciously acknowledging even about myself. So
Hmm.
no, definitely, I would have not had a clear answer about it 10 years ago.
So how is it that you arrived at these? Because these are very strong words, trustworthy, hardworking. I can understand because hardworking is something that we're all schooled into, as a value. So you were telling me that you were like finding it difficult to trust.
I still do actually. But I do see myself as someone I'm very open to hearing people's, whatever they have to say, sometimes even becoming a problem solver. And this is just something I've observed about myself. And, I think of myself as a trustworthy person. So I don't know if other people perceive me as that, honestly. This is what I think of myself.
I was actually talking to somebody yesterday, and they were talking about perception, self-perception, and how others perceive us. And I
Yeah,
think that it's really important for us to be very clear about how we perceive ourselves, because then all our
absolutely.
actions and decisions are going to come from there, right?
It's basically that, exactly that. That's what I think of myself, and that's what I practice in my life.
Excellent.
Um,
So, how
and I
would you
hope that
describe?
goes out to other people
How
as
would
well.
you describe Tarini if you were to take a few words to just let's take 3 words only to describe Tarini? How would you describe Tarini?
As an organization, we don't even think of ourselves as an organization. We think of ourselves as cheesy as it sounds, we think of ourselves as like a family where there's always like a lot of communication happening. We do have nominal positions, so like you said, okay, like I'm the president and we have a vice president and so on and so forth. But really, there's no hierarchy. And the reason for that is that the work we were wanting to do, I felt that there was no necessary need for a hierarchy. And what we wanted to translate with the people we were working with as well was that we are a close-knit group of people, and we hope you become a part of our group as well. One of the big reasons for that being that the area that we work in is something which is very, very personal to people, something which people are very, very scared to talk about, something people hesitate a lot to talk about. So, for any kind of honest sharing to happen in a field like this, I felt that that was the only way we could operate. And not under any pretenses, but we could only operate in that way when we actually feel that way about, our team as well. So,
Absolutely.
it's very egalitarian, if I could say. There's no hierarchy per se. Everybody does, whatever they're available to do, whatever they think they can do the best, and contribute in whichever way. And that's essentially what we try to translate into our projects as well.
So you work a lot. I mean, brilliant, beautiful, very well articulated. You said because we're talking about really personal places where yes, people are extremely scared and hesitant to talk about it. And honest sharing can only happen where we feel safe. So, what, according to
Exactly.
you, is a safe space?
So for me, a safe space would definitely be and I think I'm saying this out of personal experiences, in terms of an educator and a student relationship, a safe space would be where there is two-way communication. Because I have often felt that, even when people may have the best of intentions, when they're the ones who are sort of being instructional to you, that becomes a barrier for me in sort of feeling that as a safe space. So I think it's really important to be heard for me, and I think that would be my sort of the backbone of what I would perceive as a safe space. And of course, there are lots of other factors as well. I'm really, really big on being by the law, which is, like, I don't know if it's correct, incorrect, that's just how I am. So I'm really, really almost like I almost nitpick about certain things, which I'm like, is this ethical? Is this not ethical? And I'm kind of sometimes also in over my head about certain things, but I think it's a combination of things. And one of the really, really important things that has to absolutely be there is a two-way communication or a multi-way communication, given the community space.
Beautiful, brilliant. Very, very nice. So when have you had experiences where you people have been instructional with you, considering your age and saying, more than you do?
Absolutely. Considering, I don't know if people know my age when they're being this way, or or maybe they operate in a certain way and they feel like that's okay to do. But barring teachers in school, which not to excuse them, but just barring teachers in school because okay, I was actually a kid then. Even after that, we've had, especially corporates. I think I'm going to be cancelled from the corporate group anyway. So, especially corporates who, and I always tell them that I understand where you're coming from, which is maximizing profit, basically. But I don't understand that you don't even try to understand what I'm saying.
Hmm.
So, very instructional in that sense. And uh, my idea is that, of course, what I say is going to be not necessarily good for your profits, but I really wish you hear it and we can meet halfway. Because you're going to help us, we're going to help you. That's the only way it's going to work. So it really kind of puts me off, honestly. And
So, what has been your experience with working with brands and corporates that you're talking about, for preventing misinformation about sex and menstruation? Like, have you had a good experience, a supportive experience? Have they been participative?
I'm having an evolving experience where I'm, learning things like number one being like watch your back was my number one learning of working with anybody, not just brands, but especially brands, because like I said, the agenda is very different. Of course, it's a very, very welcome sort of move that a lot of brands are now embracing the idea of education and creating awareness, and to that end, using their platforms to invite educators like myself to do it. But somewhere at the back of their minds, they're not very their agenda is not very malleable, right? So it is what it is, and they kind of want you to work over it. So, so for example, and these are things that happen with, I'm not even like to name anybody because I feel like all of them are somewhat equal, and the sort more ethical brands are the exception and not the rule right now. And I hope they're moving towards it because everybody is kind of, wanting to work in the space, which is great. I think I always tell a few of my friends that sex education and menstrual health education is the new fashion blogging. So, how fashion blogging started a few years ago, and everybody wanted to do it, everybody wanted to get into it. Brands were like, this is an amazing way to like market, which it turned out to be, it's great. So I think that's a little bit of what's happening with, at least that's how I feel with sex education and menstrual health. That yes, there are people who genuinely care and who are genuinely going to put in their work. The other people are doing it because it's the it thing right now. To
Yeah.
oversimplify it, I guess.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, and it's good to have it articulated because many people are facing the same thing, and it's interesting to hear how you're moving from your own perception of being trustworthy into your little action of being nitpicky about being ethical, and then you were talking about vested agendas. So it's a very interesting journey that you're already mapping out for us, and I can literally see your struggles. And somewhere I read that you have written that when you started, you had a lot of support when you were doing just menstrual education, menstrual
Right,
hygiene, but
right,
when you entered into sex education, you got a tremendous pushback. Do you want to
right.
talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it was one of the interviews that I did with a brand, which I like. So, what I was essentially telling them that was that when I started off, I was only working in menstrual health and reproductive health. I, of course, do have a degree in public health, but they don't really train you in each area. It's kind of like a general cover to work in epidemiology and public health. So when I started off, I had actually only trained in menstrual health and reproductive health. And of course, over the years, I've had several layers of training as well. And, I still continue to kind of go through different learning curves with different people.
Mm.
And it was seen as a very noble thing to do. That was not at all like my intention or anything, but everybody would be like, oh my God, that's so amazing, like the older people, my same age group, everybody.
Mm.
It was just like this really noble thing that I was doing. I realized this was people's perception of what I was doing because it was talking about menstrual health. And, it's honestly not even a lot of people would try to get into what I'm actually doing, what are the topics I'm actually covering. But it was like, oh, you're talking about periods and these poor women don't have any information, and you're like kind of going and giving them this information. And that was actually like the opposite of what I was wanting to do. I didn't want to be that one source of information. It was about creating channels. And there was, a whole lot of approval and validation, which I didn't really ask for, but it was there and I would feel it all the time. Then when we started working in sexual health, which is, to me, it's all part of one thing, and these are all subtopics of one larger topic, right? So how can you separate one from another? So when we started working in sexual health, now of course there are topics which people don't necessarily unanimously agree with, but people also don't unanimously agree with the fact that periods are dirty. Like that's not on me or that's not on us as educators. So when we started working on that, people would be like, oh, you're just like doing this for fun, things like that. Like it wasn't seen as, it still isn't sometimes not seen as serious work. Or, if you put
Mm.
out something on, let's say, oral sex, then it's like, oh, you're just doing this for attention or you're just doing this for fun. Um, so it was little things like that. Then of course there was larger things where people were just like, oh, how can she be doing this? How can she be talking about this? How can she be putting her face on the internet? So on and so forth. And it still happens. I think I've become a little more, I don't know, tough-skinned in the face of it. I've also started realizing it's just so extremely futile, the places it's coming from, and it doesn't really affect anything I do in terms of work. So I've just started
Mm.
letting go a little bit, a little
So
bit.
you do a lot of work with the rural community as well? Do you go
Yeah.
to, I mean, I don't know about now in COVID times, but before the pandemic, would you be traveling to the rural community, rural setups, villages? Would you do all of that?
Yeah. So actually, our organization was only doing fieldwork with rural and semi-rural communities. So, maybe because I was at the time studying in Delhi, and we identified a lot of people on the fringes who were essentially a part of Delhi NCR, but were living in semi-rural settlements, so on and so forth. There were a lot of migrant camps that we found, bang in the middle of the city in like really key locations where you sort of cross that area all the time, but you don't know really what the demography is of that location. So we were only and only working offline on the field. And when COVID happened is when we started building a repository online because we
Mm.
couldn't be on the field. And one of our projects was shut down actually. I wouldn't even say halfway. We were at the beginning. We were like in the beginning phase of sort of just doing a survey, and it was shut down because of
Mm.
the lockdown and all of that happened. We again, coincidentally, somebody reached out to us from that community when they had safely gotten back to their village in Bihar, and they said, can you come and do this for us? And we ended up partnering with an organization in Bihar and doing it online in June. So like in peak COVID, but it took us a lot of work to create that kind of infrastructure because we hadn't planned for it. But that's how our online journey began, and it's been great, for one that we've been able to reach out to so many more people than we could have ever imagined doing just in the on-ground model.
Mm.
And we've also got to meet so many amazing people like yourself who, I mean, like, I don't know how we would have met you, or it would have been a really slow process of meeting if it was not for working online. So,
So
for everything.
I mean, could you reach your rural friends again, or were you like the digital divide is something that separates the people who have online access?
I mean, it's huge. So even when we worked with the group that we did work with remotely, there were just about five people in a community of 60 that had access to a smartphone with, weak network and all of that.
Mm,
So we
mm,
ended up actually getting two laptops from the organization that was
mm,
working with us instead of even leaving it for them to kind of access it on their phone. I
mm,
mean, the digital divide is so much larger than any report states it to be. And so we did two of them actually at that time with the same organization. One was, of course, in a village near Patna. The other one was in Murshidabad.
mm.
Because we had kind of figured out the dynamics and the logistics with that organization. So we ended up doing those two. But after that, to again find an organization that was willing to support us in that way, was a huge ordeal. But now we started off on another project right after the second wave. So end of June, July, which is in Uttar Pradesh. So I'm actually from Uttar Pradesh. So it's a rural area very close to my hometown. So I'm the only one who's going on the field because it's still not very viable for everybody to travel. So right now I'm just putting in 2 days a week, which works out to be enough because the number of people in the community isn't that large. And it's really like one day at a time.
Yeah,
So
one.
I don't know what
So
COVID
tell
is
me,
going to be like.
Artika, I mean, you've spoken about it quite articulately in many places, and I've read it, but I want to hear it here. Like, what is your vision? What are you working towards?
Right. So I'm working actually, I feel like towards something really, really basic. A, because I felt a lack of it, and B, because I then also did see that there were other people who were facing the lack of it. So a lot of times people ask us questions saying, "Oh, like you're not a doctor, how do you think you're going to take it forward?" Because I'm not a doctor, and that's a fact. The idea is that when we worked on the field for the first time, like I said, it was serendipity. It was actually not a project, not a topic that I chose. It was a project that I chose, and it happened to be in the field of menstrual health at that time. And it was just wild to realize that the doctors who, one was expecting this really basic information from were not being able to give it for whatever reason, lack of a channel of communication, lack of understanding, lack of time. Everybody knows the doctor-patient ratio in India is just kind of all over the place. So when we started off, all we wanted to do, and even right now, all we want to do is really just fill in that gap of information. We keep saying, fill in the gap of the information, fill in the gap of the information. And of course, as we kept going ahead, we started bringing in little actionable things. So doing something like an STI testing campaign, or even a camp which we've done physically in Delhi, where we actually got people to come and get tested. But that's actually essentially all we want to do, and that's exactly what our online project is also built on. That we really just want to fill in this gap, which is very, very prominent and which does exist even when we don't realize it exists. And that's exactly and essentially what we want to do.
Lovely. So they say God is in the detail, and you're looking at the minute micro, and you're saying mind the gap, So there's a gap over here, and let's find the gap.
Absolutely.
Very nice, very nice. So, um, since you're talking about subjects, whether it's menstrual hygiene or it is reproductive health, or you're talking about sexual health, you end up talking about things like contraceptives. You would talk about practices. You would. there's a lot that you people don't have a language to talk about or the
Hmm.
comfort level to talk about these things. So how do you actually create that comfort? How do you get people into talking with trust in?
Right, absolutely. In my opinion, and in my understanding and practice both, that happens with long-term engagement. And that's exactly what our on-ground projects are built on. So whenever we work on the field, we spend about 1 month, depending on how many people we're working with. So we work with groups as large as 500 menstruators and as small as what I'm doing right now, which is about 50 menstruators. So depending on how many people there are, we have those many people coming in from the team and working with them. And we do spend pretty much the whole of first month just getting to know them. So we just go and hang out with them. And, we get to know their names. And if it's a larger group, then we, of course, divide them into subgroups where each person from our team is assigned to a particular group. And it's essentially just about going and getting to know them, getting to know what they do in a day, what does a day look like for them, what are the issues they face in living where they're living or in a typical day in their lives, which may or may not be related to menstrual health, but to twice or thrice we found a connect in these general discussions that we've had in something which was very specific to what we were wanting to talk about. So, like I said, I think that is kind of the process of building trust again, because with a lot of communities that we work with, when they see us, they think of us as somebody who's come to distribute something, who's going to click pictures. It's sad, it's pathetic, I don't know, but it's the truth because
Yeah.
that's what people do. I myself have worked with, I think I've been volunteering with different NGOs since I was about 12 years of age, and I've seen them do it. As a child, I would have a hitch, like I didn't want to be in these pictures. So I wouldn't be in these pictures, or I'd be very hesitant, but I didn't know why I had it. So everyone would be like, oh, she's just shy, but
Hmm.
it wasn't that. And this was my issue, like what is the picture doing? Of course, I'm at the extent where I feel it's almost unethical to click these pictures and post them online for a community of endless number of people to see without their consent. So I think we spend the whole first month or so, if more, if I mean more if need be, in just kind of getting to know them and just getting to know who they are and just letting them know that we're here to stay. That our project might be 3 months, but if you need help from us in the fourth month, you can reach out to us and we will try our best to be there in whatever
Brilliant. Brilliant.
capacity we can
So
be
what you're
there.
saying is effectively that you invest time in building a safe space where there can
Absolutely.
be a dialogue that you're talking about, that kind of excellent,
And
lovely.
that's what's missing because we have come across people who have had their uterus removed and had zero conversation with the doctor,
See?
and they're sometimes 20 years of age, as young as 20
Mm-hmm.
years of age. And,
Mm-hmm.
we're like, did the doctor speak to you? Did the doctor like tell you that you maybe shouldn't do it or why you should do it? And there's been no conversation. And that's what's missing. Like I said, it's something
Yeah.
so small and something so basic, but it's definitely missing.
It is certainly missing. This, we don't have the language, we don't have the mindset, we don't have the attitude, and we have a lot of shame and stigma. Yeah,
Absolutely.
so everything is just geared to silence it down and bring us all down. So what are some of the everyday habits that you kind of talk about, to practice for safe, healthy, and sustainable sex education or sexual health or menstruation? So, what
Right.
are some of the things that you talk about?
Again, whenever we create content now, we create it from point zero. So it is our fair assumption that nobody knows anything about this topic. And if there's anybody who knows this, you're free to skip it. And if you don't, then great, it's here for you. Of course, we do acknowledge that the communities that we work in rural and semi-rural areas, the information gap may be even deeper there as compared to somebody who has access to the internet or watches even ads on the TV, even something like that could be a place of information, misinformation, both.
Mm-hmm.
But at least you have a basic idea. So we begin from like the most basic of things, like you should be changing your undergarments every day. Um, if you're washing your undergarments, dry them out in the sun, especially in the rural and semi-rural areas where there is sort of a community living. They say we dry our clothes inside the house, even in the summer, because there is so much shame and so much stigma for a person with a vagina to be drying out their underwear in the open. So they say either it is under our sari, where it's not basically getting anything from the sun, or it's happening inside our house. Things like that. We don't, we really emphasize on how frequently you should be urinating, how frequently you should be peeing, which one would imagine as something so basic, but it's something that people don't consciously think about or miss, and that in itself can become a reason for UTIs, which can become reproductive tract inflammation. There's really small things like that. Then what is the material of the underwear that you're wearing, for example? Things like that. Of course, when it comes to sexual health, the first thing that we really, really emphasize on is, knowing the distinction between contraception and protection, knowing whether you want to be using contraception and or both of the things, and that's essentially the first thing which we talk about because that's the first gap we see. And from there, then build on how receptive we feel the community is, what are the gaps that we identify in that particular group, and also the first month where we're trying to get to know them. The idea is to customize the project for them because essentially all the topics remain the same, right?
Absolutely.
For all of us in the world.
Yep.
But it's about really hitting on the
Hmm.
issues that they are maybe facing at a larger level as compared to somebody else or as compared to other issues which
So
may
you've
not be
talked
so
about
prevalent.
somewhere, you talked about teaching the women to make sanitary napkins or to
Yeah,
use cloth pads,
yeah.
reusable, but then do you take them into the hygiene of that? Because very often it has been observed that people do tend to not really use hygienic practices for reusable cloth pads, and
Right.
they don't put it out into the sun. They will hide it in a certain pocket, like what you're saying with their underwear, but even more so with something that they're using for their menstruation. So
Yeah,
how do you address that? And how
absolutely.
do you
So period.
ensure that? I mean, not only address it, but how do you ensure that? Because it might be that when you are there with them, they might get
Hmm.
this false courage because there is an external presence which is telling them it's okay. And remove your son from there, and then they're back again in the shadows of their silence. So, how
Yeah.
do you ensure that they still have the courage and the conviction to follow the hygienic practices that you've taught them?
So this is actually something I say to anybody who's in between picking period products or, not being sure or feeling scared, that it's okay. So, what you said that they're back in their shadows. The first thing we tell them is that it's okay to be back. It's okay to fall back. It's okay to fail. It's okay to feel like this is just not the product for you. It's not working out. You really want to do it because it's good for the environment. It's good for you, but it's just not happening. It's absolutely okay to feel like that. Because when we start talking about products, period products, um, some people feel like, oh, this is a conversation at the level of picking I don't know, a shampoo or a soap. So, oh, this is good for you, so you will pick it and you will be able to use it. And of course, there'll be no barriers. Like maximum, you'll miss the fragrance of your old shampoo or, something like that. But a period product is so much more than that. Yes, it's a product. Yes, you find it probably in the same store as the shampoo, but there's so much more. It's like having a relationship with your body, and this is not just for menstrual cups, which I think people have now begun to realize is an explicit relationship with your body. But even with pads, you can use and throw. It's even with the reusable pads. So I think the number one thing which we do tell them again and again is that this shift will not happen overnight. If it happens overnight for you, that's great and that's good for you. But it for most people it will not happen overnight, and that's okay. And to be kind to yourself really while using this product, because I think people don't realize, or maybe it's at such an it's at such a level in our consciousness that they feel like, oh, why can't I use this product? Like I've heard people being really really sad about not being able to insert a menstrual cup because all our friends use it, they all love it, they all find it comfortable, but I'm just not being able to use it. It's something wrong with me. And that's exactly what happens with cloth pads as well. Um, in communities where there is it's not just about drying out in the sun. It's, sometimes we, because we're in our lives living it in a certain way, don't realize certain things like I recently saw a campaign where, which it's a great campaign, which an organization is saying for every one menstrual cup you buy, we will donate one to like a community we support. And that's great. That's really great. But the fact is that communities which don't have running water, how are they going to change their menstrual cup? And of course, there is a whole lot of stigma about insertion still. And it's only in very micro communities where people are now coming to terms with things like these. So I think it's really, really important to tell them that you're fine, it's okay. Now, it was important for us to tell you that these are the negative effects of using these products. But it's fine if you fall back, and it's fine if you want to retry. And, all of that is fine, and it's your journey, and you get to sort of live it at your own pace. So, of course, one of the ways to ensure the safety about the pads that you were talking about. So, when we were very, very young as an organization, we worked with Goonj, and we actually had Goonj come and do a cloth pad making workshop for us. And, honestly, I have once sort of considered getting full time into production of, you know, usable cloth pads because I am an avid cloth pad user and I sort of swear by it. I feel like it's the best product. But also because I do feel like it's a product that has the potential of filling the gap of the all the menstruators not using the product right now. So there's about 36% menstruators who are using a product, which is mostly disposable pads and tampons. So I feel like uh, cloth pads, reusable cloth pads could be the stepping stone of moving towards at least having more people using a product, any product. Because we've come across communities that use cardboard, that use thermocol sheets, that use sawdust even, anything that lives off basically. So that's my sort of attachment with the reusable cloth pad. One way we ensure safety is that whenever we train a community in making the cloth pads, we 100% provide all the material from our side. So all of the material has gone through considerable amount of testing, including even the things like threads and pitch buttons and Velcro and everything. The cloth, of course, everything is provided from our side. And then we also, of course, go through a whole process of sanitizing it before stitching, after stitching, all of that. And another thing which we do is that we actually identify people from within the community who want to be our ambassadors of sorts, but they're basically ambassadors in their own community. Because again, selling a product is one thing, but when you tell somebody that I use it, you're really selling it. It's one thing to say, please buy it because, I want to make a profit out of it or whatever. But the other thing is I use it, I swear by this product and like I
Mm.
endorse it. So this group of people that we usually identify are the ones who are like willing to try out the product, who are excited about trying out the product, who are, really, really in line with what we are feeling and thinking as well. Of course, eventually everybody kind of takes their own time and reaches out and does all of that. So that's the whole idea. And whatever profits they make out of it is retained by the community itself. And if there are any leftovers, we take them from them and we give it to the next community as samples to make the next batch.
Lovely.
So we're actually right now not selling it or producing it at a commercial level at all.
Brilliant. But do you intend to at some point?
I don't know. I mean, I am honestly somebody who's very happy to see the people who are already doing it. EcoFem being one really big one, another one being my Agni. It takes a lot of work, and I'm just happy to see that there are people putting in that kind of work. So,
So what would
in a
you really
scenario where
want
I
to
was,
tell? What would you like to tell? I mean, the young people who are just kind of embarking on this journey of discovering themselves and discovering their body and going through all these changes and just beginning their menstrual cycle or, um, having questions about their sexual health, what kind of conversation would you like them to have? What would you tell them, like, okay, watch out for, or do this, or I don't know, what is it that you'd like to tell them?
I don't think I'd say, I don't think I'd tell them to do anything because I don't think they'd listen. So I remember I wouldn't have heard anybody saying I didn't listen to anybody saying anything 10 years ago. Um, I guess I just wish they have somebody who they do listen to, which is, in all probability a friend or maybe a parent or a sibling. And just for them to know that they're going to be okay and they don't have to compare themselves to other people. And again, this is something coming from my personal experience that now when I look back, there were so many things that I did because other people were doing it. Like I absolutely had no reason of my own for doing it whatsoever. Not even it didn't even make me happy. It didn't even, give me any pleasure of in whatsoever way. Just did it because everybody was sort of doing it, and how could I be left behind? So I think just knowing that it's okay, like just moving at your own pace is great. I'm sure there are people who are already moving at their own pace, but if there's anybody who's like me, this is for them.
Nice, very nice. Very strong message, you don't have FOMO. Just
Yeah, I don't
be
have
yourself.
to.
Right. I mean, there's much that I can continue to talk to you about. It's been such an engaging conversation, but we're coming to an end of our time here. And I hope that we can continue this conversation even offline once we get off this, because there's much that we would like to talk to you about. But before we go, can I just do like a quick fun thing with you? I mean, it's fun for me. I don't know if it's fun for you or not. Yeah?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm just, it's like almost like a rapid fire. So I'm just going to ask you
Mhm.
questions and you can give me the thing, right?
To answer, do I
So,
get a hamper?
I wish I can, I hope I can just put the coffee through,
Yeah, I would love that right now.
So, food you love.
Pizza.
Which one?
Just plain margarita, just cheese.
Song that stays in your head in a loop.
Song that recently, this is a song in the movie Bhag Milka Bhag. It's called Rangreez.
Okay.
I don't know if you heard it. Yeah,
Yes.
just recently. It changes, and when I have exams, it's honestly some weird disco tune which will play throughout my exams. But right now, it's a calmer song.
Nice. And it's a movie that you love to see again and again.
I already watch it again and again for no reason. Like I absolutely do not support anything happening in the movie. I just really find it. I feel like I'm a child when I watch it,
Which one?
which is Kabhi Khushi Kabhi Gum. I watch it all
Ah,
the time on repeat.
okay.
And if you try watching it with me, you can't because I will criticize everything, but I still will watch it to the end.
Your favorite person?
My favorite person. I don't think I have one.
No?
I don't have one. No.
Really? Okay. All right.
10 years ago, I would have said me,
Uh,
but I don't
not
have that.
today?
I mean, I love myself, but
Hmm.
I don't know if I have a favorite person. I don't know what it would mean to have a favorite person. Like, what would I do differently for this person that I don't for others?
That's
So I
so
don't have
interesting.
one.
That's such an
Who's
interesting
your favorite person?
thing. Lovely. I love that. It'll stay with me, this one. What is a safe space for you,
My friends.
your friends?
Probably like three of them. This
Mm-hmm.
is not a comment on anybody else, but these are just like three or four people I
You
feel
keep
absolutely.
increasing the ones in case somebody feels left out. So increase the circle. Yeah.
No, just it's three people, including my sibling. And
Okay.
not to say anything about anybody else, but this is just the few people that I
Safe
feel
space.
absolutely in
Lovely.
sync with. Yeah.
Yep. So equality for you is?
Equal access to opportunities.
Mhm. Sexually, you are?
You want me to talk about my sexual orientation?
Anything that you want to fill in the blank with?
Okay, great. Right now, currently heterosexual, but like just want to put it out there that it's not a constant and it does change. Just using this to put out this message.
Lovely. And that's something that I really did want to talk to you about, whether you talk about multiplicity in gender at all
Yeah,
in your conversation. So
yeah.
that's another conversation I'm going to have with you some other time. What are your
Great.
parting words right now?
What are my parting words? Be kind, and because Diwali is around the corner, please, please, please reconsider doing crackers this year, and please don't do them because I know there's a full controversy already um, about some campaigns that don't do crackers, and now people are hating on it. So be kind, and not doing crackers is an act of kindness around Diwali. So I think that would be my parting word.
Thank you, Artika. It was so, so lovely to talk to you. And I get really inspired when I see your generation picking up the baton and going out and doing things. And I'm not being instructional, but I'm just being appreciative here. And really, really, it just re-strengthens my conviction that we kind of didn't waste our life and it was worth it because we have this generation, your generation, picking it up and taking it forward. So all the more power to all your conversations. And I completely believe in investing time when you go out and meet with the community, because they are not a product, they are people.
Absolutely.
And you are the outsider, and you have to first be the insider with them, understand, center them, center their need, their voices, and then move forward.
And
And
it's
I'm not
about
being
them and not
instructional.
about us.
Yes,
No,
it's about them.
absolutely agree with you.
It's
Thank you
about
so
them.
much for
And thank
having
you. It was
me.
lovely. And I have to just do a formal closing because we hope to take this somewhere else as well, another
That's true.
platform. So just bear with me a little bit.
Not at all.
Um, so we will continue to talk about safe spaces, especially in terms of reproductive health and hygiene. Yesterday, we talked about mental health and the pandemic, and today about reproductive health, hygiene, sexual health, and menstrual hygiene. We still are trying to understand the impact of this pandemic on our mental health and physical health. It is important we talk about topics that are still so shushed. So I want to thank you once again, Artika, for coming onto our platform and having these conversations with us. If we
Thank you
have
so
to
much.
make if we have to make each home a safe space, really a safe space, we need to recognize that we have to address health holistically. And if you want to know more, join us at www.theactionproject.org. It takes INR 1,000 to make home a safe space. Please consider donating and sharing the fundraiser with your friends and family. The link to donate can be found in the comments of this live and always, always in our bio. So educate one young adult in each home. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you so much,
Thank you
Artika.
so much. I hope I speak to you again soon.
So do I. So do
And
I.
take care, stay safe. And
Thank
thank you to everybody who tuned in. Sorry, we'll read the comments now. But thank you so
you.
much for being a part of it.
Yeah, so there are loads of people who've come in and lots of comments over here as well. So all good. Some questions also, but maybe I'll DM you the questions and then you can kind
Absolutely.
of take them forward. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Thank you, Atika.
Thank
Have a
you.
good evening.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.